Think about the last time you watched someone get completely outmatched in a conference room and felt genuinely good about it. Now, imagine the person doing the outmatching walked in wearing a mini skirt and 6-inch heels, with $74 in her checking account, and 3 kids at home, and no law degree, and no plan, except a specific burning refusal to be underestimated by anyone in a suit. That's this movie. And the story behind it turns out to be even stranger than the movie. Erin Brockovich hit theaters on March 17, 2000, and turned a twice-divorced file clerk from a small California law firm into the most famous paralegal in American history. Part legal drama, part feminist war cry, part proof that the right person in the wrong room can take down a billion-dollar corporation. The film starred Julia Roberts as Erin, a woman who had no business winning and refused to hear otherwise. Albert Finney played Ed Masry, the exasperated attorney who kept saying no until he couldn't. Aaron Eckhart played the warm-hearted motorcycle neighbor, a man who in real life turned out to be something else entirely. Directed by Steven Soderbergh and produced by Jersey Films, Erin Brockovich cost $52 million, made $256 million worldwide, and earned 5 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. Today we're counting down 15 facts you didn't know about Erin Brockovich, the sting operation involving the film's own love interest, the scientific paper rewritten and published under a scientist's name over his written objection, and the reason the title character memorized every single one of her clients without ever writing a name down. Before we dive in, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into the films that shaped us. Let's get into the countdown with number 15. Number 15. The last film he didn't shoot himself. Soderbergh has said in his own words that he'd been frustrated with hiring cinematographers for years, even on a film as visually restrained as this one, what he called aggressively linear, with no fractured chronology and no color tricks. He'd already started quietly taking over parts of the camera operating on The Limey, the film before this one. By the time Erin Brockovich was wrapping, the plan was no longer quiet. His cinematographer on Erin Brockovich, Ed Lachman, saw it coming. When Lachman asked who was going to shoot Traffic, the next film, Soderbergh said, "I think I am." Lachman just smiled and said, "Yeah, I could see that coming." Since Traffic, Soderbergh has shot every feature film and television project he's directed himself, under the pseudonym Peter Andrews, his father's first and middle names, a tribute he chose partly because the Writers Guild wouldn't let him take a directed and photographed by credit on the same film. 2 years later, on Solaris, he ran into the same problem with editing and solved it the same way. Mary Ann Bernard, his mother's maiden name. 28 consecutive features, Traffic, Ocean's 11, Contagion, Magic Mike, all of them. He shot them himself. And the biggest commercial success of his career, the one that grossed more than any of them, is the one film where someone else was still behind the camera. Number 14. She didn't know it was named after her. Susanna Grant spent a year embedded in Brockovich's life before she wrote a word. She went through the trial transcripts, the waterboard records, and the investigation notes Brockovich had made herself. She came to believe the story needed an emotional spine, not an informational one, structured as a love story between Erin and Ed. Not romantic, interpersonal. That's why the film has almost no courtroom scenes. 2 big-name screenwriters and 3 big-name directors had already passed on the project. Nobody wanted to make it. The script Grant delivered is now ranked the 78th greatest screenplay of the 21st century by the Writers Guild of America. Brockovich was involved throughout. She'd sold the rights. She was consulted. There was one thing nobody told her. The film was going to be named after her. She found out at the wrap party. Soderbergh told her on the stairs. She froze. Couldn't process it. "That's when I really went, oh shit," she told the gentlewoman. She was convinced it was a terrible name for a movie. Everyone around her agreed. It grossed $250 million. The woman in the title was the last person to know it was the title. Number 13. Where? The $333 million really went. The $333 million settlement is the emotional climax of Erin Brockovich. The number lands on screen. The music rises. Justice. Delivered. Here's the math the movie doesn't show. The law firms that brought the case, Masry and Vitito, along with 2 partner firms, took 40% of the total. That's $133.6 million going to the lawyers, not the plaintiffs. An additional $10 million came off the top for litigation costs. What remained, roughly $196 million, was split among the 634 plaintiffs, an average of about $300,000 each. Some got far more. Others got far less. "We are the ones who made those guys zillionaires," one plaintiff told Ceylon. Another said, "I feel like I was treated like a country hick that didn't understand plain English." Ed Masry, the attorney Albert Finney played as the rumpled but decent heart of the film, had spent 2 years on the case and nearly bankrupted himself doing it. He took on partners, Tom Girardi's firm among them, because PG&E had exhausted him, and he couldn't finish it alone. The film made him famous. His law firm, however, went bankrupt after his death in 2005. His estate spent years trying to recover money, it said. Girardi Keese owed from settled cases. By 2020, those same files had been swallowed into the collapse of Girardi's firm. The man who played Masry, Albert Finney, was nominated for an Oscar. The man Masry is no longer around to know how the story ended. His law firm is gone. His partner on the case went to federal prison. And of the $333 million the film ends on, the law firms took home more than the next 300 plaintiffs combined. Number 12, she broke Hollywood's pay ceiling. Before Erin Brockovich, the $20 million film salary was a membership club with a specific guest list: Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, Mel Gibson, Sylvester Stallone, Leonardo DiCaprio, Adam Sandler. That was the ceiling, and no woman had reached it. The closest anyone came were Meg Ryan and Jodie Foster, each reportedly at $15 million. Roberts had carried 5 films past $100 million domestically. By commercial logic, she was in the same tier as those men. Her agent, Elaine Goldsmith Thomas, made that case directly to Universal. The studio was reportedly reluctant. Goldsmith Thomas made it simple. If DiCaprio and Sandler were getting $20 million, Roberts had earned the same. Hold on. Let me put that number in context. The film's total production budget was $52 million. Roberts' salary was $20 million. The first woman in Hollywood history to crack the gender pay ceiling took home 38 cents of every dollar the film cost to make. Universal got their money back and then some. Roberts swept every major awards body that season: BAFTA, Golden Globe, Critics' Choice, SAG Award, Oscar, becoming the first performer ever to win all 5 for a single role. 3 years later, she set another record: $25 million for Mona Lisa Smile. The ceiling, once cracked, didn't go back up. Number 11, the scene. The film never explains. There's a moment about halfway through where an attorney challenges Erin for having incomplete files, missing phone numbers. She doesn't check a document. She doesn't hesitate. She just starts reciting. Phone number, age, medical history, family members' names, the specific way the chromium affected each one. She does it for client after client, standing in the middle of a law office in full Erin Brockovich wardrobe, taking the challenge apart before it's finished forming. That scene is real, and the movie never explains why she could do it. Erin Brockovich has severe dyslexia. In high school, she was labeled the girl least likely to succeed. A teacher once called her stupid in front of the class. She was advised not to apply to college. Reading and processing information on paper was a fundamental difficulty she carried her entire life. And the way she compensated was by building a memory that functions like a filing cabinet nobody else can access. When she became a clerk at Masry and Vitito and started working the Hinckley case, she was looking at thousands of pages of medical records and legal documents. She couldn't rely on notes the way anyone else would, so she memorized everything: every plaintiff's name, every symptom, every date, every filing, all 634 of them. Not because she was performing, because she had no other option that worked. The film shows the superpower without showing where it came from. The thing that looks like raw talent, the walking, talking database rattling off facts at attorneys in a miniskirt, was built, necessity by necessity, by a woman her teachers had written off completely. Number 10. He competed against himself for the Oscar. In 2000, Steven Soderbergh released 2 films: Erin Brockovich in March, Traffic in December. Both were hits. Between them, they earned more than $200 million globally, and 10 combined Academy Award nominations, including dual Best Director nominations for Soderbergh from the same ceremony. The last time that had happened was Michael Curtis in 1938 for Angels with Dirty Faces and Four Daughters. It hasn't happened since. The two films were distributed by two competing studios, Universal for Erin Brockovich, USA Films for Traffic, with no chance of a coordinated campaign. If you were advising him, every instinct in Hollywood said, pick one and push it, or both lose. He chose neither. He publicly refused to favor one over the other and told reporters he was neutral between them. When the Directors Guild of America nominated him for both films in the same category, the press started calling it the Soderbergh versus Soderbergh contest. He won for Traffic, not Erin Brockovich. Roberts won for Erin Brockovich. Soderbergh walked out of the night with an Oscar from one film and industry respect from both. No director has managed the double nomination since. He remains the only one in history to achieve it and actually take one home. Number 9, the love interest tried to cash in on her. Aaron Eckhart plays George, the patient, warm, motorcycle-riding neighbor who becomes Aaron's anchor through the case. It's one of the more grounded romantic subplots in the film. The real man it was based on had a different arc. Jorg Hallaby had known Brockovich before any of this. He helped her move from Reno to Los Angeles. He introduced her to the law firm partner Jim Vitito, the connection that led to the job that led to Hinckley. In the film, he's the person who shows up when it matters. Then, in April 2000, while Erin Brockovich was still in theaters, actively grossing millions of dollars, Hallaby joined forces with Brockovich's first ex-husband, Sean Brown, and their lawyer, John Jeffrey Reiner, and demanded $310,000 from Brockovich and Ed Masry. The terms were specific: pay up, or they'd go to the media with claims that Brockovich was a bad mother and that she and Masry had been involved romantically. Both denied it. Masry set up a sting. Brockovich and Masry sat across the table from the men and handed over two checks: $30,000 for Hallaby, $280,000 for Brown. Then they stood up and left the room. Investigators walked in and arrested all three. Brockovich said afterward the whole situation upset her deeply. Prosecutors later dropped charges against Hallaby and Brown without explanation. Their lawyer was convicted of attempted extortion and disbarred. The man Aaron Eckhart, played as the steady, loving presence in Aaron's life, tried to cash in on her, while the movie about her life was selling out theaters. The investigators were already in the building when the checks changed hands. Number 8. The studio panicked over her language. There's a scene in Erin Brockovich where Erin sits across from a room full of corporate lawyers and explains, with complete composure, exactly how she got 634 people to sign on in 5 days, implying she used more than charm to get it done. She's not joking, she's not embarrassed, she means every word. Before the film opened, Universal executives were convinced that scene, and dozens like it, would end them at the box office. The real Brockovich talked that way. It wasn't a character choice, it was source material. Soderbergh and Grant kept every word. Universal kept worrying. The film opened March 17, 2000. It grossed $28.1 million, its opening weekend at number 1, beating Mission to Mars and Final Destination. It held number 1 for 3 consecutive weekends and finished as the 10th highest grossing domestic film of the year with $125.6 million. Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars. He called the character development, facile, and thin, and spent significant space on the wardrobe. He was outvoted by approximately 43 million people. The studio that spent months worrying about a woman who refused to moderate her language watched that language become the whole point. Number 7. He was sentenced on his 86th birthday. Tom Girardi was a California attorney who was part of the real legal team behind the Hinckley case, the actual case, before anyone made a movie about it. When the film came out in 2000, Girardi was thanked in the credits and served as an advisor to the production. Within years, he was inducted into the Trial Lawyer Hall of Fame and became the first trial lawyer ever appointed to the California Judicial Council. For 2 decades, his reputation was inseparable from the moral authority of the Erin Brockovich story. Here's the thing. The California State Bar received 205 complaints against Girardi over 4 decades. It took no action on any of them. In December 2020, a federal judge froze Girardi's assets. He was accused of misappropriating settlement money belonging to families who lost loved ones in a 2018 Indonesian plane crash, keeping it rather than forwarding it to them. His firm, Girardi Keys, was forced into involuntary bankruptcy. He was disbarred in 2022. In August 2024, a federal jury convicted him on 4 counts of wire fraud for stealing $15 million from clients over a decade. On June 3, 2025, his 86th birthday, he was sentenced to 87 months in federal prison. U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli said at sentencing, "This self-proclaimed champion of justice was nothing more than a thief and a liar who conned his vulnerable clients out of millions of dollars. He'd been funding a private jet, jewelry, luxury cars, the entertainment company of his estranged wife, a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills cast member. The moral prestige of Erin Brockovich, the weight of that settlement, the sense that someone had stood up for the right thing, ran, in part, through a man who spent decades doing the opposite to the people in his own office. The champion of justice was the last person in the room who deserved the title." Number 6. The scene he cut after filming it. Here is something that actually happened that isn't in the movie. Erin Brockovich's health took a serious hit during her investigation of the Hinckley contamination. The hexavalent chromium she spent months documenting, going door to door through a poisoned community, handling contaminated documents, breathing desert air near unlined holding ponds, got into her system badly enough that she had to be taken in for care. Soderbergh filmed it, then he cut it. His explanation from the DVD commentary: "I didn't want people to think that this was going to turn into one of those movies where the protagonist gets terminally ill. It was a tough call because Erin really did get sick and was hospitalized for a while. 1 hour and 4 minutes of footage was removed for the theatrical release. That scene went with it." Soderbergh's reasoning: "This wasn't a film about a woman who suffered. It was a film about a woman who couldn't be stopped. Showing her struggling, even temporarily, even accurately, would have broken something essential. But the real Brockovich's body kept the receipt. Watch the scenes where she's standing in Hinckley, kneeling to talk to the kids, driving the desert roads back and forth. She was doing all of that while the same water was getting into her. The movie doesn't say it. It doesn't need to." Number 5. The scientist who objected in writing. The $333 million settlement closed in 1996. PG&E wrote the check, and then, quietly, they went to work on the science. There was a 1987 study by a Chinese scientist named Jiandong Zhang that had found a strong link between chromium-6 in drinking water and elevated rates of stomach cancer. That study had been influential during Hinckley negotiations. PG&E hired a San Francisco consulting firm called ChemRisk and sent them after it. ChemRisk tracked Zhang down, a retired Chinese government health officer, and paid him approximately $2,000 for access to his original research data. They then rewrote his findings, reversed his conclusions, and submitted the altered version to a peer-reviewed medical journal under Zhang's name, without disclosing PG&E's involvement or ChemRisk's role. Zhang objected in writing. The paper was published anyway, in 1997. The fraudulent study was then cited by a California state scientific panel reviewing chromium-6 drinking water regulations, a panel that included ChemRisk's own CEO as a member, a man who was also, simultaneously, a Bush administration appointee to a CDC advisory body on toxic chemicals. The panel recommended against strict regulation. Standards were delayed. The Environmental Working Group eventually exposed the fraud. The journal retracted the paper in 2006. By 2010, EWG testing found chromium-6 in 31 out of 35 American cities tested, serving more than 26 million people. By some estimates, more than 200 million Americans drink water with detectable levels of it today. California's chromium-6 drinking water standard, when it was finally set in 2014, was challenged by industry groups and thrown out by a judge in 2017. There is still no federal legal limit for chromium-6 in drinking water today. Number 4. The Oscar speech that forgot her name. Julia Roberts won Best Actress at the 73rd Academy Awards on March 25, 2001. Third nomination, first win. She had swept every major precursor: Golden Globe, BAFTA, Critics' Choice, SAG. The envelope was a formality. She walked to the microphone and said, "I have a television, so I'm going to spend some time here to tell you some things." She told conductor Bill Conti to sit down because he was too quick with his baton, and she might never be here again. She rattled through her thanks. Universal, Albert Finney, Aaron Eckhart, Soderbergh, pausing mid-list to throw "Stickman, I see you" back at Conti, who was clearly trying to wrap her up. She kept going. Benjamin Bratt, her sister, her agent, her mother. Nearly 4 minutes. One of the longest Best Actress speeches in Oscar history. She ended with, "I love the world. I'm so happy." She did not say the name Erin Brockovich once. The woman whose name was in the title, whose story was the entire film, whose actual life had been the source material for every scene, not mentioned. Roberts knew the moment she walked off stage. She told E! News. "During my out-of-body experience, I didn't acknowledge her. Shamefully, shamefully. With great humility, I acknowledge her profusely." The next morning, Roberts sent flowers to Brockovich's door with a note. "You know, I wouldn't have been up there had it not been for you." The real Brockovich wasn't at the ceremony. One of her children was sick, and she watched on television. Her response to the omission, later told to Vulture, "I thought nothing of it. This wasn't about me. It was Julia's moment. It didn't even faze me." That is a more Erin Brockovich reaction than anything Julia Roberts did on screen. Number 3. The real hero has a different name. The character at the center of the Hinckley story, the woman whose family is sick, whose house PG&E is trying to buy, who becomes the human anchor of the entire case, is called Donna Jensen in the film. Marg Helgenberger plays her. At the end, she receives $5 million. She cries. The music rises. Her name was Roberta Walker. The filmmakers compressed her actual actions and several other resident stories into a single fictional character. Because what Walker actually did, the research, the door-to-door organizing, the suspicion that started the entire case, would have been hard to fit into one character without losing believability. Walker was the one who got suspicious when PG&E offered to buy her house, worth about $25,000, for $60,000. She countered at $250,000, expecting negotiation. They accepted immediately. She started asking neighbors. Inexplicable offers everywhere. She went to the library, checked out a book on chromium, and taught herself the difference between chromium-3 and chromium-6. She started copying every document she could find. She went door to door through Hinckley, telling people what she'd uncovered. She tracked down a law firm. That law firm employed Erin Brockovich. Walker received far less than the $5 million her fictional counterpart gets in the closing scene. She later told ABC News she didn't even receive a fraction of that. Her family's health never fully recovered from the exposure. Multiple surgeries, chronic illness, the kind of long-term toll the settlement check was supposed to cover. She left Hinckley for good. "It made it look like we won," she told a reporter. "And we really didn't." The film gave Donna Jensen a name, a face, and $5 million. It gave Roberta Walker none of those things. Number 2, it's still in the water. PG&E began buying up properties in Hinckley almost immediately after the 1996 settlement. They became the town's largest landowner. They bought homes, then bulldozed the buildings to prevent squatters. If you drove through Hinckley today looking for the community that Julia Roberts fought to save, you would find mostly empty desert. By 2016, the New York Times described it as a ghost town. The contamination plume still beneath the town covers roughly 8 miles in length and 2 miles in width. PG&E spent more than $750 million on remediation by 2013. Their own engineers estimated it would require another 40 years to finish. No one alive during the original dumping will live to see the cleanup completed. And then there's the number the film had no way of knowing. Chromium-6 is not a Hinckley problem. By 2010, the Environmental Working Group found it in the tap water of 31 out of 35 American cities they tested, serving more than 26 million people. By more recent estimates, more than 200 million Americans drink water with detectable levels of it. The federal government has still never set a specific legal limit for chromium-6 in drinking water. California tried. It was challenged in court by industry groups and thrown out by a judge in 2017 on grounds that the state hadn't shown the standard was economically feasible. The $333 million settlement closed a case. It did not close the problem. Every community that filed an environmental lawsuit after 2000 did it in a world where this film had already made that fight legible to anyone who watched it. Number 1, what the movie doesn't show you. The movie ends with a victory. It earns it. 634 people whose water had been contaminated for decades received a $333 million settlement, while the company that did it had told them it was safe. That happened. Here's what else happened. The man Aaron Eckhart played as the film's love interest tried to cash in on the woman the film celebrated, while the movie was still in theaters. Investigators were waiting in the next room. The attorney the film made famous as a champion of justice spent the same decade stealing from his own clients, funded a private jet, and a television lifestyle on their settlement money, was convicted of federal fraud, and was sentenced to over 7 years in federal prison on his 86th birthday. The woman whose actions actually started the case had her story folded into a single fictional composite, received far less than the film implies, and eventually had to leave the town she'd tried to save. And Julia Roberts gave a 4-minute Oscar speech for a role built on refusing to go unacknowledged, and forgot to say the name of the woman the role was built on. And Erin Brockovich, the real one, born in Lawrence, Kansas in 1960, dyslexic, twice divorced, $74 in her account when the story started, got flowers from Roberts the next morning, told everyone who asked that it didn't bother her, and went back to work. The corporation won mostly. The celebrated lawyer was a fraud. The man the film cast as the love interest tried to cash in on her too. The woman who actually started everything was erased from her own narrative. And the woman the movie was named after showed up every day regardless and kept filing. And there you have it. 15 facts about Erin Brockovich. Which of these hit hardest? Tell us in the comments, and tell us which film we should cover next. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss the next one. Until next time.